Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, just because they lost the opener doesn't mean you can't subscribe to Off the Floor. You need to complain about it somewhere, so subscribe. Use the link right here in the description. $2.99 per month. If you do it on a desktop, Apple charges you an extra buck on the phone. So we need to tell people. Also, make sure that you click all the way through. We see a lot of signups, but you don't get access to anything unless you actually pay. This is America. Check it out. Again, Off the Floor, you get host updates, stuff first from us, communicate with each other all day long, all night long. It was going until 5 a.m. last night. And yes, you can mute it. So check it out. Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes our friend Eric Rubenstein. You can find him at ericrubenstein.com or at 877-829-3742. If you had a car accident, well, first, we hope you're okay. But then reach out to Eric because he'll help get you money that you deserve. Big Miami Heat fan, went to St. Thomas University, grew up in Lauderhill. He's a South Florida guy. He's an icon. Check him out, 877-829-ERIC or Attorney Rubenstein on Instagram. And now, today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing rubber frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust.
You sound scared.
It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
Okay, so you realize this is your fault, right? We got Brady Hawk, today's floor plan. We're going to discuss one aspect of the disastrous opening night, really a disastrous third quarter. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about here. They got outscored 39-18. I woke up and my daughter sent me a text which said the Heat were bad last night. It's like, oh, yes, they were bad. Jimmy, 3 points. So everybody's a critic. But by the way, it is your fault because we finally changed the intro. We added Brady to the intro, and that happened. And
Don't
so
put
you're
this on
coming out.
me.
You're coming out. That's it. Who should we add? Who should we add?
Let's put you twice.
Eternal Matt. Yeah, maybe. Eternal Matt, Naveen. I don't know. I mean, any of the guys we can add. I guess it was Major and Adele who were on the post-game show with Greg yesterday, so maybe it should be them. Every time Major's on, they lose. I don't know what that's about. But anyway, that was bad. Okay, and you and I were both there for it. The ceremony at halftime was typical Heat. They do that stuff better than anybody else. And it was touching with Pat, talking about, and to me, the key line of it was Showtime. Showtime was great. Madison Square Garden was exciting, but the Miami Heat will always be family. And so it was great. And then, so how did the Heat follow that? They got outscored 39-18 in the third quarter. It reminded me somewhat of the opener in 2006, where they come off winning a championship. This team, of course, did not do that, but they come off winning a championship. They got their rings, and they got blown out, I think, by 32 by the Bulls at home. And we kept saying, it's an anomaly. It's Shaq and Dwayne. They'll be fine. And, of course, they ended the season by getting swept off the floor by the same Bulls, by Luol Deng and company in the first round of playoffs, and Pat clapping them off the floor. So maybe the Heat should just not have ceremonies anymore. And maybe this whole Dwayne thing they're doing next week of the Detroit game, because they lose that one, just cancel the season. Okay, that's it. Anyway, but we're going to talk about, look, here's the thing about this. Their defense was worse than their offense last night. Do we agree on that?
In the second half, 100%. That stretch at the beginning, like the first 6 minutes of the third quarter, like I didn't see them guard on one possession. Like they were bullying them. I mean, the Magic are a big team, but like they were absolutely just overpowering them, doing whatever they want.
Right. And I said in several episodes we did, like, that Magic team is a measuring stick for the Heat this year. I hate that it's come to this, because typically they've been the little brother in the state, but that's the team they have to finish ahead of, because if they win the division, which is a lousy division, they only need to pick off one other team to get out of the play-in. And so to me, Orlando is the team that should be in your sights. And you didn't look like you belonged on the same floor with them, honestly. And I like the Orlando team. I think it's missing a piece, which is like a creator in the backcourt. But they got a lot of defenders. They got a lot of length. Paolo, as you mentioned, is a bully. And Franz is very skilled. And so they have a lot of different places they can go. KCP was a great addition for what they do. They're like a De'Aaron Fox away from being a championship contender. So they're a concern. But we're going to focus more on the Heat here. And even though I said that the defense was worse than the offense, we're going to focus on the offense because Rozier said it too. And Jimmy used to say this all the time when Jimmy used to actually be accountable and speak to the media after games. Because he walked right past yesterday. And I can't. I've been crediting him for his attitude this entire preseason. But like you're the best player on the team and you want $50 million extension from somebody, like take the 2 minutes and just say, okay, we effed up. We'll be better tomorrow. I understand it's trite and nobody cares about us. It's not about us. It's the fans' reaction to it was very negative, and it's just a very negative way to set up the season. He literally just walked right past everybody and left it for Rozier and Jaquez in the locker room and Hero and Bam in the media room, in the interview room to clean it up. And I think it's a bad precedent. So I'll just start there. You score 3 points in the season opener, just take the 2 minutes and spit out the bullshit cliches. That's where I'm at with it. But anyway, you did listen to Bam in the interview room, and Bam spoke about the offense, and this I think is so. Why don't we play that, and then I'm gonna have you react to it.
I mean, for me, man, it was just I was running the offense, and you fall short of that. Sometimes you get lost track of the game when you're trying to do the right thing all the time, and I feel like that's where me and Jimmy, gotta come together and figure out how we can be aggressive in the new offense.
Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, I just thought that part of his press conference was interesting because everybody's talking about the new offense, quote unquote, and it's kind of funny like how they're phrasing it as the new offense because it didn't look like the new offense to me. Like when we talked about the new offense, that was preseason. That looked like the usual offense. That looked like the parts of that second half. The first half, I thought there were moments where they got into some stuff. Second half, it was just the same old stagnant, guard play, and then everybody standing around. But I do think it was interesting to hear Bam talk and kind of say, me and Jimmy need to find ways to be aggressive and get involved in this new offense. And it's like, I think when a lot of people hear that, they say, why are your two best players having to find their spots in this offense? Like the offense should be built around them. But I think there's so much focus on making Terry and Tyler work in this offseason. It was all about that backcourt working, that this is the glue to it all. So there was a lot of focus on that, and they put them in a position to be able to play on and off the ball, to be able to move off the ball, the screening. We saw that at the beginning of the game. But at some point, you're going to have run sets for Jimmy and Bam consistently. And I think the interesting part, like comparing the preseason offense to what we saw last night, is like, number one, the spacing was 100% different. Like we saw those clips or those screenshots. I was posting them in the preseason where it was like that 5-out stuff where they just had 5 defenders lined up across the 3-point line and the whole paint was open. I didn't see a moment last night where anything looked like that. And it's a credit to Orlando. And I know Spo talked about that. It's like a lot of the offensive problems and the new offense that people are going to be criticizing is masked because the Magic defense is that good. Like they're going to be a top 3 to 5 defense this season. So they're just positioned. They just have great positional size. Like they just are a tough matchup. I'm watching Jalen Suggs last night match up with Terry, and it's like Terry could usually create space whenever he feels like it. Suggs was just not giving anybody space. Like he is just so good on that perimeter defensively. So maybe it's a part of that. But watching what Jimmy and Bam were doing, where Jimmy just didn't seem involved a lot of the time, like I wasn't worried about like the inefficiency because I think at the beginning it was a couple tip-ins, like bunnies he just missed at the rim, and it was like, okay, like you could get away with that. But the aggression stuff, where you're not really seeing him involved like in actual actions, and if he's not going to be involved in actual actions, he's going to have to be like a crazy off-ball roamer, where like that's what he was doing a little bit in preseason. Like remember how many times he's like playing under the rim, where he's like playing those bottom boxes and he's like playing on the offensive boards and doing that stuff. I don't know how much that's going to work in the long term of the season. Like they're going to have to find ways to get him to the line, to get him downhill and all that stuff. And then Bam, he got to the line a bunch. And I kind of felt like I know I made the bold take that I said he could be like a top 10 in free throw attempts. I felt like it would go up, but I didn't think it would be at the expense of his shot attempts because he didn't really seem. I mean, I think he ended up getting 2 threes up. One of them was like when the game was actually in play. But other than that, like it didn't seem like he was able to get in any flow or get shots off. And the part at the beginning of that clip where he says, I'm having to, set up the offense.
Right.
Like that gets back to what we've talked about this for how many years now, where it's putting him in a position to set up the offense. I don't know if that's going to be the case 100%. Like I don't want to read too much into this, but it did feel like he was running, handoffs and popping out to the three and not getting the ball quite a bit. He's going to have to demand it. They're going to have to find a way specifically. Jimmy will find, I know everybody's going to look at Jimmy. Jimmy will find his moments. Jimmy will find his shot attempts. Jimmy will find his free throw attempts. But they have to figure out this Bam thing because I was kind of saying before, he's not going to get up the amount of threes that I think a lot of people expected. He is you can't just like have like this 20 points per game style and then say you're going to shoot threes and only do that. Like he has to still play his game and they have to find that balance. Like they have to find the balance in this offense where it's like, okay, we're eliminating mid ranges, but Bam did most of his work down there last season. And that's what made him what he is right now. They're going to have to give him those shots somewhat.
Well, I think that this adjustment was predictable. We talked about kind of when they get punched in the mouth, what happens? Do they go back to their tendencies? And they did. And, they're going to face 2 teams now in Charlotte and Detroit that won't do that to them. And then they get the Knicks, who will. and I just think, and I know it didn't look like it against Boston, but obviously, New York has at least a couple of elite type defenders in Anunoby and Bridges, and so they're gonna have to deal with that on the perimeter, mucking things up. But I just here's the thing about it, and this is why I do think Bam and Jimmy need to adjust. They've tried this with Bam and Jimmy being the central sort of hubs of the offense, and they have not been a top 12 offense during the course. The only time that they were was really the bubble year, and honestly, Goran made a lot of that happen, and so they haven't had those pressure releases for them. So here Spo is trying to think outside the box and give them, a little bit of, again, force them to play into the offense instead of the offense playing through them. And you see this. I mean, I don't know. Like Jimmy just shut down. Like at least Bam, like you said, like Bam was getting fouled early in the game. And if he'd made some of those free throws, then he starts to get himself in rhythm. I think that hurt him too. I think that got in his head, particularly on opening night. But you're right. I mean, this thing about, everything that, a large majority of the fans want him to do is great if it's additive, but not if it subtracts from other things he's doing. And I think that they're going to have to figure out a way. And, to try to make Hero and Rozier work, yes, there are adjustments that Spo has had to make to that regard. I thought Tyler was their best player in the first half. I thought he looked very comfortable. He wasn't forcing things. You saw him taking all kinds of different shots. I thought his reads were terrific. I mean, literally, he was responsible for Jimmy's only basket, which was the dunk in transition. But then I think he got away from it too, because I think they all sort of got frustrated. And then we saw a lot of Terry one-on-one, which is part of my concern here. I like the rim pressure that Terry applies, and I like his ability to make something happen out of nothing. But then there are also times that he's going to just try to force his way into rhythm, and that sort of gets the rest of the offense out of rhythm. This is not a perfect fit. We talked about, I mean, look, Jovic was doing exactly what you want him to do early in the game, right? Like, I thought he had a great first stint. It showed up in the scoring, but it was also the way he was playing off the ball and feeding off of others. But I'm not going to have a lot of sympathy for Bam and Jimmy about this because they tried it the other way. And I just, now they need to try something different, and they need to get out of their comfort zone. And that's kind of why I say I give Bam credit for at least addressing it and speaking to it. I don't know where Jimmy's head's at with it. Like you were seeing, I'm watching, the comments are rolling in during the game, and they're like, he looks disinterested. He looks like, obviously he had bounce. We saw it on the dunk. So I don't think it was something physical, but What do you make of him specifically last night? I mean, 3 points. He got outscored by Thomas Bryant. What are we doing here?
So I mean, like the whole key to like this quote unquote new offense was Tyler. Like the biggest portion of this was Tyler being off ball. Like that was the whole key to this. And like the whole thing here is like, okay, if you have Tyler off ball and he can play off the catch, it gives more opportunity for Jimmy and Bam to play their game. So like in theory, it shouldn't be a case where like they're searching for their aggression. Like it should be a place where it's like them creating uh a bunch of movement from the other guys, and then Tyler could play off the ball in his spots, off the catch, all of that stuff. Uh, so Jimmy, I mean, just didn't seem like he was looking to create off the bounce. Like when he had the ball, it just felt like he was kind of just swinging and moving and kind of going through the motions a little bit offensively. And here's the other thing, like the other major thing to this new offense thing, like the half court is one thing, but a big portion of what they're going to do offensively is run in transition, playoff turnovers, and all that stuff. And they couldn't turn that team over for a good portion of that game. Like they had the one Tyler run out. They had the Terry found Jovic on the break, and Jovic laid it in with the left. Other than that, they were not able to get out on the break, and I think that's ultimately what's going to like feed this team. It's crazy to say that, by the way, because in past years with the transition problems, but they are going to feed off that this year. They're going to lean into that totally. So that I think hurt them as well in this game. It didn't get them in a flow, and then it just bogged down the half court stuff. So, but Jimmy specifically, it's tough to say. Like I think the other thing is like it's not a good matchup for him specifically. Like there's certain teams that I look at, like Dallas always gives him trouble. Orlando gave him some trouble last night. And what's the similarity there? They just
Denver
have
too.
they have
Denver.
Denver as well. Positional size
Yeah.
across the board. There's not those guys on the roster you say I can attack that guy. I could find this mismatch and I can
Mhm.
go at him. That's how he finds his advantages against any team you look at. When he goes like he'll get into a flow from that when he starts finding his mismatches on the floor. And there's just not that guy really on this roster that he can really like totally go at. So I don't know if I don't think I'm totally going to read into like the individual stuff for Jimmy Bam. I think they're going to figure it out. It's more so for me that it's what it was all off season. How are they going to figure out like the balance and the distribution of who's where? Like the distribution of
Mhm.
shot attempts, all that stuff. Like there has to be a somewhat of knowledge of like not who's the first option, who's the fourth option, but like know like who's the guy in this new offense. It can't just be like one of the four of them and then the other three kind of stand around for a good portion of time. That's the whole portion of building this new offense, kind of move around and do that stuff. So I think Jimmy Bam will be okay. Like I do. I think
Mhm.
this was somewhat of a thing of playing Orlando, but it also I think it also is worrisome though, because I just it doesn't feel like this is a longevity play, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if
Yeah.
this is built to like last an 82 game season, what we saw in the preseason. That was always the worry. It was like, can this consistently last? So it's a taxing style, we said. There's a
Mhm.
lot of layers that go into this stuff with the movement and stuff. And if you don't have total buy-in from like your top end guys, it's not going to work and it's going to bog down to what we saw last night.
Yeah, and I then it makes you wonder if it's a longevity play beyond the season too, because it does. Again, Spo had to get outside the box to experiment to maximize these guys that he has, but it's not a natural thing in any way, and it's not going to be a natural thing. And so, that's the issue here. All right, when we come back, we're gonna get into the rotation last night. If there's anything that Spo can do to give them a pressure release, because he did something I don't think we were expecting necessarily last night in a couple of different ways. All right. First, we do want to mention a great sponsor of the Five Reasons Sports Network, our friends over at Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. Again, that's put down 5, get 50. PrizePicks.com. Go to the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store. It is legal in the state of Florida. It is legal in the state of Florida. Again, you can play 2 to 4 players together. They've got all kinds of deals and specials and other things like that. Like they gave you the Anthony Edwards free square the other day. This is daily fantasy simplified. I do think this is again, if you're just trying to get into the daily fantasy, try it. This is something I would definitely recommend for you. PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down 5. Get 50 today, but you got to use that code. All right, the rotation. I do think we sort of, I don't know. I think we we had a feeling that he was going to get Rozier in the second unit with Jaquez. And part of this, again, Kevin Love didn't play last night. Personal reasons, ruled out right before the game. So Thomas Bryant played. Should I do this for 30 seconds? Let me do this for 30 seconds, okay? I'm just – all right. I understand you want to see the new guy. I'm not talking to you. You know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to it's literally like the Heat. I said this is going to happen. The Heat are posting like IGs about, Pat Riley's ceremony. Where's where? Where's where? I mean, we're going to get this all season long, just like we did with Jovic last year. And I'm having trouble understanding the mentality. Like, I don't know how a guy who needs to put on weight. Okay, Brady, are you one of those people on the
I'm not
where's
one of
where
those people, but I think the perspective is if you're going to lose by 30 to the Orlando Magic and your backup big is Thomas Bryant and you have this first round pick with potential behind him, like if you're clearly not at the level of a Magic level team in opening night, there's no reason. I just think you can play the young guy. Like they're in a position. If they were winning, if they were at the top of the top 4 in their conference, all this stuff, I think everybody would totally understand. But it's the fact that we have these play-in conversations and everything that if you need an upside play, I just think, especially at a night where Love's out, I think that's kind of the key because I think Love does have that backup spot right now. But I think people want to see him. Like people will be fine with the mistakes. Like I just think that if there was a position to do it, it's when you're losing opening night down by 30. Just lean into the young guy and the potential.
Okay, but
that's the flip
but
side.
we've talked. I get the flip side, but we've talked about this, and I don't think this is as much about what happening for the team now is what they want. I think they want to reward Ware with those minutes when they feel like he's earned those minutes. And it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg thing, but I trust them in this development process because we just saw it work with Jovic and we've seen it work with others. And so I get it. I get kind of the slow playing this, and I understand that people are not Thomas Bryant fans, but again, I didn't think his minutes were awful last night. Like he put him out there to play against Mo Wagner, okay, who is a big guy, okay, and plays with physicality. And so you put Bryant out there, who, although he's not a good defender, is obviously not as lean as Ware is at this stage. And I think he thought, okay, this matchup is fine for this period of time. So that's why I'm okay with it. But my larger point is this, right? If we're going to talk about why Ware is playing or not playing all season, when your two best players shoot 2 for 13, I mean, what are we doing here? Like, I mean, like this team is not going to function or do anything with its two best players playing like shit. Like, this has nothing to do with Khalil Ware. Now, as we say that, we're going to talk about some other things to make things easier on Jimmy and Bam. Okay, perhaps. Okay, and then Tyler and others, who are expected to lead this thing now. But I just think we're losing the forest from the trees, so to speak, from the 7-foot trees. Like I understand people want size, but he's not there yet. And I do think there are games that Spoke can put him in to kind of wreck things and see if he can change the dynamic of it and give him that space to learn on the fly. I do think there are places to do that. I don't necessarily know that the season opener against Orlando was that time, even with Love out. That's where I'm at with it. And more so, even if you can argue it was that time, as you just so patiently and lucidly did, I don't think it's why they lost the damn game, which is what I seem to be seeing on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Facebook, MySpace, and Reddit, and every other social media outlet today. It was not because he didn't play Khalil Ware. All right, Terry Rozier with the second unit. He took out Rozier first to put in Jaquez. So we know who the sixth man is. Not that that's a surprise. And then he did that so that he could give Terry a rest and bring Terry back in with the second unit. With Hawkins and Duncan are going to be attached in a lot of ways because we know that they have chemistry. He brought them in. What do you think of that? I mean, I know you've talked about sort of doing it in pairs, not a single player.
That's 100% where I land. I mean, so I think people were looking at kind of the stat sheet and they're like, okay, why is Terry still like the lead man in shot attempts in a game like this? And it's like when you're taking him out first and you have Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam on the bench for a good portion of time, and Terry's running with the second unit, like that's kind of the formula for a guy that's going to get the most shot attempts. So I originally kept saying I think Terry and Bam should be glued, and then Tyler and Jimmy could play with like the Haywood Love group. I think the main way, first of all, Spo's going to play around with this. I really do believe that. Even when it was a close game early in the first half, I kept saying like this substitution pattern is going to change game by game. I think he's going to just try to figure it out and mess around with some stuff. I don't think this is going to stick. I just don't like that grouping really. I think they need to put one of we've said this for years now, and I think that they have a little bit more leeway to not do it now because they have creators. But I think you need one of Jimmy and Bam, especially when they're not in a flow. Like if you're gonna have a night where they're not really getting it going, you got to have one of them on the floor to kind of be the aggressor and try to see if they can like find something and get into a flow of some kind. Them being glued together, where I think Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam were pretty much glued together most of the game. Yeah, I think that has to change. So I guess the way of doing it is pretty much what we talked about before, where it's like Terry, Hawkins, Duncan, and you keep Bam in, or you take Terry out with Bam and just take Bam out early, bring Bam back in with Terry, and just give Thomas Bryant or Love or Ware, whoever it is, that just short early stint late in the first quarter, and then you can come back with that grouping, and then you roll back out with like Tyler, Jimmy, and Love and Haywood, etc. I just really do think the pair thing can work. If we're gonna say you're talking about like them finding a flow together, the main four guys, this and that, you have to spread them out a little bit. I thought it was a pretty decent period. Like the game didn't get away with them in that point, so I don't want to like make this the main thing. But they were on the bench, a pretty long time. Like it felt like Terry was out there with that second unit for a while, and it was a tie game for most of the time. Things really got away when the starting all of them were together, and that's why we're sitting here talking about the new offense stuff with the starters. But I 100%, they're going to have to like switch that up. I really do believe that the pairs thing works the best to me. It's the only way they can like find all four of them getting a flow on the same night.
Right, and we saw at the end of the game, it was already gotten away. We got to like 21 and 23 and 25, and then all of a sudden it was 32. While Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler were all sitting at the scorer's table. Like he was planning on putting them back in. I don't know if he thought they could come back or if he just wanted them to feel this on opening night, which I think was more the latter, to be honest. He's done that before. Pat used to do that all the time. And Pop does it. I mean, it's a pretty typical tactic if you don't think that your group is doing what you want them to do. And they never got back in. They never got back in because they just sat there and then the thing just went away. 5 minutes left. But here's the other part of it that concerns me. So we're talking a lot, and we'll close here. We're talking a lot about, okay, Hero, and we want him to play more off the ball, and he's bought into it. But they're not using a second point guard, so to speak. So he didn't play really 10 until obviously the game got away. So he didn't play Drew Smith. He didn't play Burks, who played really well during the preseason and can do a little bit of handling. And so essentially, whenever Terry wasn't in, Tyler was doing that stuff. And again, it's not that he can't, it's just that you're trying to get a guy to buy into this role, and then you're giving him minutes during the game. I mean, does he want to give him those minutes so he can still kind of be himself? To me, it feels like you're trying to force this new style, and then you're saying, "Oh no, well, we're going to get away from it for this period of time, and we're going to run the offense, through, with Tyler basically handling." I don't know. It seems counterintuitive to me.
I just think it's confusing for him, especially day one.
Yeah,
I like
right.
if they want him to play that style, and it's not like he played on ball for a good portion of that game, and he played well. Like he was kind of their better creators on the ball in that game because he was aggressive, he was scoring, he was getting to the rim, he was doing a lot of things you want to see. But it's confusing at the fact of that they built all this stuff up. The whole goal here is in those lineups to have specifically Jimmy. I mean, Jimmy has to be the creator there. Jimmy has to be the guy with the ball in his hands that can create paint touches, kick out to Tyler off the catch, and he could play that role. Screening from the role players, like all that stuff together. It really shouldn't have been Tyler creating in those lineups with Jimmy and Bam kind of spacing and screening and rolling and all that stuff. So I agree. I mean, that's also a big portion of the substitution pattern because I think that's forcing him into this role. I like, they staggered Terry and Tyler, a good bit at the beginning. Then they came back around with the Terry, Tyler, Duncan lineup, which I thought was just interesting that they're leaning into the shooting.
They had some good moments with that, but is that sustainable? I don't know.
I mean,
with
the right
Highsmith at the 4, with Highsmith at the 4 and Brian at the 5. Like I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
and that's
I
going to
guess
be
with
Love. I
Kevin.
mean,
Right. But then defensively, like I mean, what is that? Like you're asking Haywood to cover up for all of this. I'll tell you the one thing that we talked about a lot, but I had in the back of my mind all this time. And I talked to Nate Duncan about this, they don't have a lot of great individual defenders. They have 2. Okay, 3 when Jimmy's engaged, and I know that they were playing off of it and getting the deflections and the steals and covering up for that during the preseason. But when everybody's talked about they're going to be a top 5 defense, I'm like, okay, you got to start with Spo and Bam and Haywood. All right, and what? Like, who else is plus? Like, like Jaquez has the potential to be. Jovic made a lot of improvement last year. Terry and Tyler try. Okay, Duncan has gotten better, but I mean, we're not talking. They don't have, again, Bridges and Anunoby, okay, and Hart out there on the wings. Like, this is not that. And I just I don't know that the defense. To me, the offense has to get better because I'm not as confident in the defense as some people are, and um, and so yes, I can see Spo saying, okay, well let's roll out Duncan with Tyler and Terry and see how that looks. But then, I mean, you're so effing small. Like you've got hey, and Haywood's playing the 4 and Brian, and again, Khalil Ware's not going to clean all that stuff up for you. I mean, I don't know. Play Bam with that lineup then, right?
yeah.
Like play Bam and have Bam out there with Duncan, so you have that natural chemistry. I think he's got to sort some things out. I just think that and he seems, as you said, Spo seems so happy in the pregame and seemed happy on the sidelines, and then he wasn't so
Can we do
happy
a
afterwards.
side by side before and after of that game? Like that needs to be done because
I've never seen him so happy for a regular season game before. Like I think he really did think his team was going to come in and play better, and I thought actually the first half they did some good things. Like I said, like they're getting nothing from Jimmy and Bam. They're up 4 at one point, and I'm like, okay, seeing what you want from Terry and Tyler, but this is the thing. They're trying to make the Terry and Tyler thing work, right? And it's what we got back to at the beginning of the show. Okay, well now Bam and Jimmy get lost, and I'll just say this: if you're the captain in one hand, and you're a guy who wants something close to $60 million a year, figure out a way to get found. Anyway, thank you.
The last thing I want to
close.
say, because
Go.
they're going to play Charlotte on Saturday, and
Yeah.
100%, I really do believe this. Jimmy and Bam are going to have a really good game because Jimmy always
I do
plays well
too.
against that team. They can hunt
I
things.
know.
They can get to their spots in a different way. But ultimately, the problem isn't that they can't get to it, because I think they will get to it.
Yeah.
But the problem is against these type of teams, they have to figure that out. Like them winning in Charlotte or Detroit even has some size as well. But like winning against these teams where they find advantages, like, is good. They need to win those type of games. They have to. That's the key this season. But like ultimately, they have to find counters to the teams like Orlando, Dallas, Denver, those positional size teams.
They better not lose any of these games, because that 6-game trip. I mean, you're dealing with the skill of Phoenix, okay, which is going to be difficult to match. You've got the size of Minnesota, okay, because they have positional size everywhere. Also, even without Towns. Okay, I mean, they just replaced him with Randall. They still got Naz Reid, who destroys them on a frequent basis, and Gobert, and you're dealing with Ant, and you're dealing with Jaden McDaniels. Like, that is not a great matchup for you at all. And then again, they get Denver on that trip. Okay, guaranteed loss in that building. We know that. And no, the 2 with Indiana at the end would be, those will be interesting. But again, I'm not out on everything. I'm not. What we were worried about was them going back to their tendencies when pressed. It happened. And yes, Orlando is a little bit anomalous in that way, but not completely. Like you said, there are a lot of teams around the league that are going to do this to them. So they need to figure it out. And like I said, Jimmy and Bam need to get found. They have to figure out a way to make this work. They're the highest paid players. And I do think that they'll have breakout games in the next couple, but you're right. It doesn't mean anything if then against the Knicks, they go back, to what they looked like last night. All right. Thanks to Brady. More episodes over the weekend. I will be off for a couple days. Brady and Alex, Greg's going to be at the game in Charlotte, so not that far from where he lives. So Brady and Alex will be handling the post-game pod on that night. And of course, we're going to have everything coming up to the Wade event on Sunday, where I'll be with Alex And like I said, maybe the Heat shouldn't have any more events. Have a good one.